I walked into my living room on what I thought would be a peaceful Sunday afternoon to find my daughter Rebecca hosting a family reunion with relatives I had never seen before in my entire 74 years of life, including a woman claiming to be my long-lost sister from Iowa and a man insisting he was my deceased brother's son. All of whom were asking detailed questions about my will and estate planning while producing fake family photos and fabricated stories about our shared childhood memories that never actually happened. The elaborate deception became clear when I discovered Rebecca had hired professional actors to pose as my relatives for months, building relationships with me and gaining my trust, all as part of a calculated scheme to manipulate my will and steal my $3 million inheritance that was meant to go to legitimate family members and charitable organizations. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Margaret Thompson, and I am a 74-year-old widow living in a beautiful Victorian home in Charleston, South Carolina that has been in my family for 4 generations. After my husband Charles passed away 3 years ago from a heart attack, I found myself alone with a substantial estate that included the family home, investment properties, antique collections, and life insurance proceeds that totaled approximately $3 million. My only child, Rebecca, is 45 years old and has struggled with financial responsibility throughout her adult life, accumulating significant debts through poor business decisions, gambling problems, and an expensive lifestyle that far exceeded her income as a part-time real estate agent. Our relationship had become increasingly strained over the years as she repeatedly asked for loans and advances on her inheritance, requests that I often denied because I wanted to ensure the money would last throughout my retirement and be properly distributed according to my carefully planned estate. Rebecca had always been frustrated by my conservative approach to money management and my decision to leave substantial portions of my estate to various charitable organizations rather than giving her the entire inheritance. She felt entitled to my wealth and had made numerous attempts to convince me to change my will over the years, arguments that often ended in heated confrontations and periods of silence between us. The beginning of Rebecca's elaborate deception started about 8 months ago when she began mentioning distant relatives that she claimed to have reconnected with through online genealogy research and social media platforms. She would casually bring up these supposed family members during our weekly phone calls, describing how she had been building relationships with cousins, aunts, and uncles that we had supposedly lost touch with over the decades. "Mom, you're never going to believe this, but I found your sister Linda on Facebook," Rebecca told me during one of these conversations. "She's been living in Iowa all these years and has been looking for you. She has so many stories about your childhood together and can't wait to reconnect with you after all this time." I was initially skeptical because I didn't have a sister named Linda, and my family history was well documented through years of genealogy research that my late husband and I had conducted together. However, Rebecca seemed so excited about these discoveries that I began to question my own memories and wonder if there might be relatives I had forgotten about or never known existed. Rebecca's approach was gradual and psychologically manipulative, designed to plant seeds of doubt about my own family knowledge while creating anticipation for these supposed reunions. She would share carefully crafted stories about these relatives that included specific details about our family history, mixed with plausible fiction that made the deceptions seem believable. The first relative to contact me directly was Linda Patterson, who called me one evening claiming to be my younger sister who had been adopted by another family when we were children. Linda had a warm, friendly voice and seemed to know details about my childhood home, my parents' names, and family traditions that made her story seem credible. "Margaret, I can't believe I finally found you after all these years," Linda said during our first phone conversation. "I've been searching for my biological family since I was 18, and Rebecca helped me connect the dots through DNA testing and genealogy research. I have so many questions about our parents and our family history." Linda's story was compelling and emotionally appealing, particularly because she claimed to have vague memories of being separated from me when she was very young due to our parents' financial difficulties during the Great Depression. She described feeling incomplete her entire life because she had always known she had a sister somewhere, but had never been able to find me. Over the following weeks, Linda and I developed what felt like a genuine sister relationship through regular phone calls, email exchanges, and the sharing of family photos that she claimed to have inherited from her adoptive family. She seemed genuinely interested in my life, my memories of our parents, and my current circumstances as a widow dealing with the challenges of aging. Linda's knowledge of our family history was impressive and seemed too detailed to be fabricated, including stories about our father's work as a railroad conductor, our mother's love of gardening, and family traditions like Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations that felt authentic and emotionally resonant. The second relative to enter my life was David Thompson, who claimed to be my deceased brother Robert's son from a relationship that Robert had never told our family about. David contacted me through Facebook with a message explaining that he had recently learned about his biological father's identity through DNA testing and was hoping to connect with his father's family. "Aunt Margaret, I know this must be a shock, but I believe your brother Robert was my biological father," David wrote in his initial message. "My mother never told me who my father was, but recent DNA results connected me to the Thompson family tree, and Rebecca helped me understand that Robert was most likely my dad." David's story was particularly believable because my brother Robert had died in a car accident 20 years earlier, and it was plausible that he might have had relationships or children that our family didn't know about. David claimed to be 38 years old, which would have made him 17 when Robert died, and his physical appearance in photos seemed to show some resemblance to our family features. Like Linda, David was emotionally engaging and seemed genuinely interested in learning about his supposed father and connecting with his newfound family. He shared stories about growing up without knowing his father's identity and expressed gratitude for finally having answers about his biological heritage. The third relative was Maria Santos, who claimed to be our cousin from our mother's side of the family, specifically the daughter of our mother's brother who had moved to California decades earlier. Maria's story involved a family dispute that had caused years of separation, but she claimed to have always wanted to reconnect with our branch of the family. "I've been wanting to reach out for years, but I was afraid that the old family disagreements might still cause problems," Maria explained during our first phone conversation. "When Rebecca found me through genealogy research, I was so happy to learn that you were open to reconnecting and healing old wounds." Each of these supposed relatives had compelling personal stories, seemed genuinely interested in building relationships with me, and demonstrated knowledge of family history that made their claims seem credible. They would call regularly, send thoughtful cards and gifts, and express interest in visiting me in Charleston to strengthen our family bonds. The emotional impact of suddenly having family members reach out after years of feeling isolated following my husband's death was profound and deeply meaningful to me. These relationships filled a void in my life and provided the sense of family connection that I had been missing since Charles passed away. As these relationships developed over several months, the conversation gradually shifted toward family history, inheritance, and estate planning in ways that seemed natural and appropriate for newly reconnected relatives. Linda would mention her financial struggles as a single mother. David would talk about his dreams of starting a business if he could access some capital, and Maria would discuss her concerns about caring for her aging mother. The discussions about my will and estate planning began subtly, with these supposed relatives expressing interest in ensuring that family wealth stayed within the family rather than going to outside organizations. They would make comments about how wonderful it was that I was financially secure and how important it was to take care of family members who were struggling. "It's so amazing that you've been able to build such a successful life, Margaret," Linda would say during our conversations. "I just hope that when the time comes, you'll remember family members who haven't been as fortunate and could really use some help getting back on their feet." These conversations became more direct over time, with Rebecca facilitating group calls where all of these supposed relatives would participate in discussions about family values, the importance of keeping wealth within the family, and their hopes that I would consider including them in my estate planning. The pressure to change my will became more explicit as these relationships deepened, and these individuals became more comfortable expressing their expectations about inheritance. They would share sob stories about financial hardships, medical bills, and family emergencies that required immediate financial assistance, while suggesting that my estate could provide life-changing opportunities for struggling family members. Rebecca orchestrated a family reunion at my home where I could meet these relatives in person and strengthen our family bonds. The reunion was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon and was presented as a surprise celebration of our family reconnection and my recent birthday. When I walked into my living room that Sunday afternoon, I found Linda, David, Maria, and 2 additional people I had never heard of before, all claiming to be family members and expressing excitement about finally meeting me in person. The scene felt overwhelming and somewhat theatrical, with everyone talking at once and sharing stories about our supposed family connections. The conversation quickly turned to my estate planning, with these individuals expressing concern about my advanced age and the importance of having a current will that reflected my wishes for family inheritance. They had apparently discussed my financial situation extensively and had specific suggestions about how my estate should be distributed to ensure that family members were properly provided for. "Margaret, we've all been talking about how important it is for you to update your will to include all of your family members," Linda said during the reunion. "It would be such a tragedy if something happened to you and your wealth ended up going to strangers instead of the family members who love you and need your help." The reunion felt scripted and rehearsed, with these supposed relatives making coordinated arguments about inheritance and family responsibility while producing photo albums and family documents that they claimed proved our relationships. The pressure was intense and uncomfortable, making me feel cornered and manipulated rather than celebrated and loved. Something about the situation felt wrong and artificial, particularly the way these individuals seemed more interested in discussing my money than learning about me as a person or sharing genuine family memories. Their stories began to seem inconsistent, and some of their knowledge about family history seemed too perfect and detailed to be authentic. After the reunion, I began to feel suspicious about these sudden family connections and decided to conduct my own investigation into their claims. I contacted a professional genealogist who specialized in family research and fraud detection to verify the family relationships that these individuals were claiming. The genealogist's investigation revealed that none of these supposed relatives were actually related to me or my family. Linda Patterson, David Thompson, and Maria Santos were all professional actors who had been hired by Rebecca to pose as my relatives and manipulate me into changing my will in their favor. Mrs. Thompson, I've conducted extensive research into the family connections that these individuals are claiming, and I can definitively state that none of them are related to you, the genealogist explained. The family documents they've provided are sophisticated forgeries, and their knowledge of your family history appears to have been researched and scripted rather than based on genuine family connections. The investigation revealed that Rebecca had spent months researching our family history, creating detailed profiles for these fictional relatives, and coaching professional actors on how to portray convincing family members. She had hired these actors through talent agencies that specialized in providing people for long-term deception projects, including inheritance fraud and elder manipulation schemes. The actors had been paid substantial fees for their months-long performances, with bonuses tied to their success in convincing me to change my will. Rebecca had provided them with extensive background information, family photos that had been digitally manipulated, and forged documents that supported their fictional family relationships. The genealogist's report included evidence that Rebecca had been working with a criminal organization that specialized in inheritance fraud targeting elderly individuals with substantial estates. This organization provided actors, forged documents, and coaching services to help family members manipulate elderly relatives into changing their wills. Your daughter was part of a sophisticated criminal enterprise that has been operating these inheritance fraud schemes for several years, the genealogist explained. They target elderly individuals with substantial estates and estranged family relationships, then create fictional relatives to pressure the victims into changing their estate planning. The emotional betrayal of discovering that my own daughter had orchestrated such an elaborate deception was devastating and heartbreaking. The realization that the family connections I had cherished for months were completely fabricated felt like a profound violation of my trust and emotions. The investigation also revealed that Rebecca had been planning to have these fictional relatives contest my will after my death if I didn't change it during my lifetime. She had been collecting evidence of my supposed close relationships with these individuals and was prepared to argue that my failure to include them in my will was evidence of diminished mental capacity or undue influence from other parties. I immediately contacted law enforcement to report the fraud and provide evidence of Rebecca's criminal conspiracy. The FBI investigation revealed the full scope of the inheritance fraud operation and led to arrests of Rebecca, the professional actors, and several other individuals involved in the criminal enterprise. The criminal charges against Rebecca included elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and wire fraud related to the sophisticated nature of the deception, and the use of electronic communications to coordinate the scheme. The professional actors were charged with fraud and conspiracy for their roles in the deception. During the investigation, law enforcement discovered that this criminal organization had been operating similar schemes against dozens of elderly victims across multiple states, generating millions of dollars in fraudulent inheritance transfers and estate modifications. The trial process was emotionally difficult because I had to testify about the details of how these fictional relatives had manipulated my emotions and convinced me to consider changing my will. The evidence included recorded phone conversations, email exchanges, and documentation of the payments Rebecca had made to the professional actors. Rebecca showed no remorse during the trial and continued to argue that she was entitled to my entire inheritance regardless of the methods she had used to try to obtain it. Her defense attorney argued that she had been motivated by love and concern for my welfare, but the evidence clearly demonstrated the calculated and criminal nature of her actions. The professional actors testified about the extensive training and coaching they had received from Rebecca, including detailed scripts for phone conversations, background stories they were supposed to memorize, and instructions on how to gradually introduce discussions about inheritance and estate planning. Rebecca provided us with extensive background information about Mrs. Thompson's family history and coached us on how to portray convincing relatives, one of the actors testified. She told us that this was a long-term project that could last for months or even years, and that our success would be measured by whether we could convince Mrs. Thompson to change her will. Rebecca was ultimately sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the costs associated with the investigation and the emotional damages caused by her fraudulent scheme. The other members of the criminal organization received sentences ranging from 2 to 8 years depending on their roles in the fraud operation and their criminal histories. The investigation led to the dismantling of the entire inheritance fraud network and prevented them from victimizing additional elderly individuals. The recovery process from Rebecca's betrayal required extensive therapy to address the emotional trauma of being manipulated by my own daughter and the people I had believed were loving family members. The violation of trust was so profound that it affected my ability to form new relationships and trust other people's motivations. I completely revised my estate planning to ensure that Rebecca would not inherit any portion of my wealth, instead directing my entire estate to charitable organizations that support elderly individuals who have been victimized by family fraud. The experience taught me the importance of verifying family relationships and being skeptical of sudden family connections, especially when they involve discussions of inheritance. The legal costs associated with the investigation, criminal prosecution, and estate planning revisions totaled over $50,000, but the protection of my estate from Rebecca's fraudulent scheme was worth the investment. The experience also led me to become an advocate for elderly individuals who have been victimized by family fraud and inheritance schemes. Today, more than 2 years after discovering Rebecca's elaborate deception, I have found peace in my decision to cut all contact with her and focus on charitable activities that honor my late husband's memory and help other elderly individuals who have been betrayed by family members. The experience taught me that biological relationships don't guarantee love or loyalty, and that protecting oneself from manipulation is more important than maintaining family connections at any cost. The investigation revealed that inheritance fraud targeting elderly individuals is a growing problem that often involves family members who feel entitled to their relatives' wealth and are willing to use sophisticated deception to obtain it. The emotional manipulation and psychological abuse involved in these schemes can be as devastating as the financial losses, particularly when the perpetrators are trusted family members. If you found this shocking story of family inheritance fraud and elaborate deception compelling and want to hear more incredible true stories about family betrayal and financial crimes, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Share your thoughts about inheritance fraud, family trust, and elderly exploitation in the comments below, and let us know if you've ever experienced similar situations with family members who felt entitled to your wealth or assets. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.